Judy's just having way too much fun today.
Well, got to make sure you're ready to go, Paula.
I'm ready. You said I had 3 minutes.
Well, now you're down to two.
Okay, we can go ahead and get started now. Welcome everyone this afternoon to Why is Communication Always a Problem? My name is Paula McCain. I'm a recovery business advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. I have a new pen. Thank you, Grant Swift. The SBDC is the leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We're grant funded, and because of that, we're able to offer our services such as this webinar to you at no cost. And now I welcome Lorna Kibbe to present Why is Communication Always a Problem? You can go ahead and put your questions or comments in the chat room, and we will get to them during the presentation. Okay, about Lorna, she is an ASBDC conference speaker. She has 10 years of experience working at the SBDC in the Florida Gulf Coast University region, and she's a leadership expert. Welcome, Lorna.
Thank you. Always have to remember to unmute. So how come y'all don't have your cameras on? I hope that if you can put your camera on, you will, but if you're driving, please don't, because that's really scary. I've been seeing people do that lately. It's worrying me a little bit. So today we're here to talk about communication. And, I'm a consultant type, and I go into organizations and I try to help them figure out their issues and then see what we can do. And whenever I'm talking to them in the first conversation, of course, as consultants will do, I ask, what kind of problems are you having? What outcomes are you hoping to achieve? And why do you think you're having these issues? And every time without fail, it comes back to communication. I am a communications major. I graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a communications degree, and I love communication. And I'm always happy to come back to it. But it just fascinates me that as much as we've studied communication, I mean, you can get a PhD in communication. We've been studying it forever, and we still have problems. How is that possible that communication can still be such an issue? Well, we can start with the definition of communication itself. I'm going to share my screen with you here. So let's see if we got that okay. Seeing my screen okay? Pretty good. Paula, can you give me a thumbs up? Everybody can see me okay? All right, thank you. Look at this definition of communication. All right, so here we go. The exchange of thoughts, messages, or information as by speech, signals, writing, or behavior. Oh my goodness, that's the Webster definition of communication. No wonder it's hard. I mean, just look at that definition. Okay, let's break it apart. The exchange of thoughts. Okay, we're doomed right there. Like, my husband cannot figure out what I'm thinking. Like, we're doomed, right? Oh, but that's not all. Messages or information. The exchange of thoughts, messages, or information. And then let's make it a little more complicated. By speech. Signals. Signals? What if your signals are different than mine? Writing? Writing's not easy either. Oh, and then to top it all off, how about behavior? All those nonverbals. Well, we could probably stop here. Now you know why communication is difficult. It's all over the place. It's a mess. I wanted to ask you, and I really want y'all to participate with me in this by giving me some chat feedback, if you will, because I'd like for you to be a part of this. You know, it's real boring just to sit and listen to a lecture, but to engage you and have you be part of it. I hope you play along with me here, because what I'd like to know in chat right now is what communication problems are causing challenges for you in your work that's making it really difficult. You saw the definition. We know it's a mess, but what kind of things routinely make it difficult for you? Like for me, just to get you started while you're putting some ideas in chat, this is difficult because I can only see just a few people. You know, and as a communicator, as somebody who does conference speaking and speaks to groups and trains and that kind of thing, I really get a lot of feedback from my audience, you know, when I'm with them face to face. I can kind of get a feel for how they're doing, whether they're engaged, whether they're tired and need a break. But with this format, so many of you I can't see, and I feel like I'm talking to myself, and it's a lot harder for me because of that feedback. So that's one of my challenges right now with communication. I want to see what we're getting in chat. I see there are some responses. Let me see what I can see. I can't see the chat. Paula, is there something in chat? Does this mean no? Oh, there it is. I see it, Paula. I think I got it. Okay. So only using email instead of picking up the phone from Roger. Oh, that's from Paula. Paula, yeah. Email instead of picking up the phone. That's a problem because, you know, more and more it's like it's an intrusion to call somebody, right? You know, we don't, I learned that younger generations are using a different signal for a phone than this. This shows that I'm old and this shows that I'm young. So let me do that again. I just read that talking about nonverbals, you know. Okay, so picking up the phone, right? So picking up the phone is considered an intrusion, and so many of us are working remotely. It's just a decision sometimes to figure out what to do, isn't it? I mean, how to communicate your message. It is. You have to make it's this whole thing now. Like, should I call? Should I email? Should I text? Well, that's intrusive. I'm not sure what to do. So you hit one for sure. Let's see. Roger says people hear something different than what is said. I know. And Roger, I don't understand why, because I think I'm perfectly clear. And they hear something different and it just blows my mind. You know, like when I'm talking to somebody and I tell them this whole thing and 3 minutes later they ask me a question that I just answered. Like, were you listening? Like, I don't understand. So I'm with you on that one, Roger. Let's see. This is from Lumbria. Hope I said that right. I think tone and misinterpretation of body language. Oh my gosh, tone is huge. You really hit on something there. Is it Lumbria? Did I say it right? Nod. Did I get it right, Lumbria?
It's Lumbria.
Okay. So Lumbria. The thing with this is, especially when we're not face to face, those body language things are really tough. You know, like on the phone, you really can't see. And even on platforms like Zoom, which I think that's one of the reasons why with phones now we're using, you know, FaceTime and all those things to try to see people. But you still can't really, I mean, you're only seeing me from the shoulders up. You have no idea what's going on. Even when I do this, you can't see me because my hands aren't high enough, you know? So you really have a hard time interpreting my body language now. I think it's gotten a lot harder with remote work. And tone is huge. And I'm actually a little surprised you brought that up because a lot of people don't see that. So I'm impressed that you brought that up as one of the first things because we don't realize sometimes how our tone is coming across and changing the message that we're trying to deliver, because sometimes it's subconscious, right? I mean, we don't realize that we sound short. We don't realize that we sound upset or that we sound like we don't care. And people hear it up because it goes back to the other thing. People hear something different than what is said. Those are some really good ones. So for me, there's all kinds of problems, and I know you've experienced this. I mean, sometimes people talk too much, like I'm doing now, but I have to because I'm doing the webinar, so forgive me. But you know, sometimes people talk so much that I can't really get in what I want to say, you know, trying to be polite. Sometimes they don't get to the point. That's kind of irritating for me. You know, it's like they beat around the bush, they talk about all this other stuff, and really I just want to know this much. Anybody ever had that happen to you? You want to know this much and they want to tell you the whole story of their life. Yeah, that can be hard for me sometimes because I feel like I don't always have time to listen to it. It's like they don't understand my point when I think I'm making it perfectly clear. That's something that bothers me. And interruptions that, especially working remotely, it's interesting because I have an ability to really get deep into a project and really focus on something. And when the phone rings or something, it's almost like an interruption, like, you know, I think, what are you doing bothering me right now? And then I have to watch out for that tone thing that Lumbria brought up, because I might sound on the phone a little bit, you know, like I don't want to talk to you because I was just so busy doing something else that this is all of a sudden an interruption. That's crazy. So there's all kinds of things that happen, I think, in work. Anybody think of any others? I don't see any more in chat that make it really difficult. There's all kinds of challenges in communication. I thought you would enjoy this. You have to have a little humor sometimes. Can you see my chat box on the screen? Is that blocking your view? Okay, good. All right, so this is funny. This is Zitz. It's in the paper every day. Teenager Jeremy. Jeremy, can I ask you a question? Sure, what is it? He raises up his phone and takes a picture of his mom. He looks at the picture and he says, Mom, and she says, do you miss face-to-face conversations? I do. I thought that was especially appropriate right now. You know, it's like we don't have those face-to-face conversations that we're used to having, and I do miss that. Do you guys miss it? Oh, I really miss that. You know, it's like I had to go to a physical therapist, and it was like the best time I've had for weeks because I actually talked to somebody face to face, you know. It's been wonderful. It's bad when you're looking forward to a medical appointment. So why is it such a problem? That's the question. Why is communication always such a problem? Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why communication is a problem. For one thing, it's just hard. Listening is hard. Finding the right words to say is hard. Sometimes you really have to think about the words that you use. We misinterpret their body language. They misinterpret ours. We don't understand their words. They don't understand ours. We don't really have time to think before we have to respond. And so we don't say it as clearly as maybe we could. It's hard. Maybe we use the wrong method. You know, oh gosh, I have this going on with a customer of mine that I kept sending an email and she wasn't responding at all. It was pretty irritating because we had a good relationship and I don't know why she wasn't responding, you know? So one day I got so frustrated, I sent her a text and I said, hey, you know, I've been trying to reach you and haven't heard from you yet. Are you okay? You know, like, what's going on? She responded instantly to my text and said, I never read my email. She doesn't read her email at all, ever. How did I know that? You know, so sometimes, you know, if I'd have thought through it, I would have texted her a lot sooner and saved myself some frustration. Sometimes it's just a challenge to figure out what's the right method to use, right? We think people will understand. They don't. We don't have time sometimes to sit down and plan out and structure our message the way that we want to. There's just a lot of things and you know, if we were face to face, you would be telling me these things. You would be telling me these things. So if you think of any others and you want to throw them in chat, you know, please do. But There's just so many ways that communication can go wrong. We're going to try something really interesting for a webinar. We're going to try an activity. You ready for this? I'm so brave to try this. Okay, so this is an activity that I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm just going to sit back in a minute and just give you a minute to work through it. But you can see the instructions here on the screen. In the following line of letters, cross out 6 letters so that the remaining letters, without altering their sequence, spell a familiar English word. So if you follow the directions exactly, you can do this. If you figure it out, put it in chat. If you figure out the word, let's see if anybody can figure it out. So see if you can just figure that out. Just give it a look, just follow the directions, and see if you can figure it out. While you're looking at it, I'll tell you that the reason I use this activity and I really like this activity is because the directions are actually very clear. And if you follow the directions literally, you'll have no problem with it. But a lot of people do have a problem with it. A lot of people cannot figure it out. I don't see any responses in chat. I don't see that anyone's got it yet. Let me give it another few seconds here. Oh, Lori has a really close guess. That's really close, Lori. If you had this on paper, you might have it right. All right, I'm going to show you. Are you ready? Okay, so it says cross out 6 letters. Cross out 6 letters. 6 letters. And the word that's left is banana. Ah, Lori got it there at the end. Good job, Lori. Lori gets a star. Yay, Lori! Woo! You see that? Now, you know, some people say that was a trick question, but actually it was very literal. But there's probably some ways that I could have made my message a little clearer. Yeah. Maybe if I had put in 6 letters, like when I did this, the instructions, maybe if I said, in the following line of letters, cross out 6 letters and use quotation marks around the 6 letters, maybe you would have seen it, you think? Or bolded it or capitalized the 6 letters or something to draw attention to that. There's probably something I could have done to make it easier for you, right? But in fact, the instructions are pretty clear. It says cross out 6 letters. If you do literally what it says, then you get it right. This is why communication is so hard. Because like I put this out there and in my mind, it's perfectly clear what the answer is. Like, why would anybody not get this? And yet most people don't get this just because of the way the instructions are written. Communication is hard. How many times do you think maybe you've ever given instructions like that, believed they were perfectly clear, and wondered what in the world is wrong with everybody else? Right? I know I've done it. I put it out, I'm so sure it's perfectly clear. And then I wonder what's wrong with them because they didn't do what I said. But you can see how easily that can get mixed up. So there was this guy, and his name is Albert Mehrabian. And Mehrabian in the 1950s did a lot of study about communication. And he's very famous for this one piece of research that he did, which has resonated and carried on for years and years and years and always will. What he said in his research was that there are 3 ways that people interpret information. Now, you've probably heard this before because this is old stuff, right? But he said, here's 3 ways. He said, people understand me through one of 3 ways. It's either my tone of voice. That's one way they're interpreting information. Or the words I speak. That's another part of interpreting my message. And third are the visual things, the nonverbals, the visual clues. So he said, any message that I'm giving to you face to face, there are 3 things that are happening in your brain that are helping you to interpret my message. You're looking at my tone of voice, you're looking at the words I speak, and you're looking at the visuals. And with those three things, you're coming through with what you think I'm saying. That's how you interpret messages. Now, what's particularly interesting about Moravian is that he assigned percentages to these things. And this is the part you've probably heard before. He said that on a 100% scale, he was able to define what percentage of the message you're interpreting based on my tone versus the words that I use versus the visual. So I want you to guess right now. Just, you've got a piece of paper or something, just jot it down, guess, play along with me here. And if somebody wants to be so brave to put it in chat, that's cool too. But what percentage of the message that I'm delivering to you do you think is coming through just by my tone of voice? And what percentage of the message that I'm delivering is just because of the actual words that I'm saying? And what percentage is coming through to you just based on what you see? I remember it's 100% scale. And I know we're not exactly face to face, so it's not exactly the same thing. But let me hear some guesses. Let me see some guesses. Anybody want to tell us their guess? Anybody want to speak out loud, unmute themselves and tell me? I got a couple coming in chat. That's good. I got a 50 on tone, 25 on verbal, and a 25 on visual. I've got a 75 on tone, 20 on verbal, and a 5 on visual. Brett is saying 50, 20, 30. I'm really happy that so far nobody's put 33 in third, 33 in a third, 30 and 3 in third. Thank you. That's not the right answer. Okay, here we have a 30, a 10, and a 60. Okay. And I've got a 50, 25, 25. Okay. So far, I'm thinking Lumbria is pretty close. Here's the answer. Here's what Moravian said. Face-to-face conversations, the way that we interpret information, tone is 38%. 38% is just based on my tone of voice. You make a judgment based on my tone of voice. You already have as to whether I know what I'm talking about, as to whether I'm confident with my words. You've made a decision just based on tone, whether this is going to be exciting or dull, whether my voice is monotone or expressive. You've made all kinds of decisions about my message just based on my tone of voice already. Moravian would say about 38%. Oh, Janice says 0 on visual because I cannot see you. I'm so sorry, Janice, you can't see me. It's really worth seeing. I wish I could see you too. Okay, now here's this verbal. Are you ready for this? This will blow your mind. What? 7%. Isn't that crazy? Only 7%? I always tell people the good news is that if English is your second language, you shouldn't be so worried about it because it doesn't matter that much the words you use anyway. Isn't that something? And then, of course, that leaves visual with a huge whopping 55%. The visual, all the things that they see going on. They're looking at you and they're making decisions about, do you mean it? Do your facial expressions match what you're saying? Are you for real? So all kinds of decisions are coming through based on that. So these are Moravian's numbers. Now, of course, he says that these statistics apply when attitudes and feelings are at play. But here's the problem with Moravian, and this is where it gets us into trouble. Hey, somebody can see me now. Oh, Janice, you're so funny. Janice wrote, I can see you now, and yes, it is worth seeing you. I love that. Thank you. Oh, and 55% for visual is what I would say now. That's cute. So here's the thing. Moravian is criticized because people say, you can't say this is literally true. And a lot of people have tried to make this literal and take it to a workshop like this and make a big deal out of it. Like, this is it, guys. This is how it is. I'm not trying to tell you that this is literally true. We can't apply it that way. But the reason I want you to see it mainly is because I do think what's held over time is the fact that visual is huge. Is it 55% or is it 56%? Doesn't matter. The thing is, visual is huge. You can't leave the visual part out. That's why the phone conversations are so difficult sometimes, because you really can't see what's going on. So we tried to, do FaceTime and all these kind of things, Zoom, stuff like that, so that we can see people. because that visual is such a missing piece if it's not there. And the words that we speak are important, but the words alone aren't going to carry you through. You know, I'm a speaker, and I have new speakers that I've worked with who spend a lot of time trying to carve the right words and memorize them to make sure they use the words exactly right. It's like, that's cool, but that's only a small percentage of what people are gonna understand you by. They're gonna be looking at a whole lot more than just the words that you use, right? And the tone is huge. You know, if you've ever had someone in your life, and there are people who are tone challenged, you know, they just always sound monotone. Have you ever known anybody like that? They just always, or the other way, I have some people who are just so excited all the time that they're just not even for real. You just can't even believe they're for real, you know? So tone plays an important role too. So the reason I want to show you this is because I want you to understand that when we're talking about communication, all of these things are at play. And we need to keep that in mind in everything that we do. You know, the question people ask me here is, does this apply to all forms of communication? Yes, I believe it does. I really do. As a matter of fact, there have been a lot of studies about the telephone. You remember when the telephone used to be just a telephone, you know, that's when you have a conversation and you don't see the person, you talk to them on an instrument. Not this. You see, I don't want an instrument. Check this out. On the phone, the words that you use account for 18%. And the tone of voice, 82%. Hi, Janice, I see you now. Good to see you. Can you believe that? 82%. Isn't that nuts? So, you know, the phone worries me because, like I said, you know, I don't think I always sound so good on the phone. For one thing, if the phone rings and I don't know the number, then I just know that you're either calling me from the Police Benevolent Association or to sell me a car warranty. And I'm already upset when I answer the phone. And here you are, a nice person, and I already sound like I'm upset. I'd probably just killed the conversation in my hello, like, this is Lorna Kibbe, what do you want? That's not what I say, but you know, this is Lorna Kibbe. It's like, because I'm afraid not to answer, because what if it's you? But then I blow it by messing up the tone from the beginning because I think you're a car warranty salesperson. Right? Are you understanding why communication is so hard? It's incredible. There's just so many ways for us to misinterpret information. I'm going to try another activity with you because I'm just a brave person. This time, all you have to do is listen. All right? All you have to do is listen. This is about a war hero. I'm going to read you a story from an autobiography. And all I want you to do when I'm done, I'm just going to ask you, who do you think it is? All right? So here we go. I'm going to read you a story about a war hero. This man had an unhappy childhood. He had little formal education. His father bitterly opposed his ambition to become an artist. Through self-education, he became the author of a book that became a national bestseller. Obstacles did not discourage him. When others say it's impossible, he hurdled each barrier as it came. He's known throughout the world for dynamic speeches. He built an active youth movement of selected young people. His closest associates say he accomplished great deeds out of passion of his will in order to create the kind of government he believes in. It's no wonder that he's a decorated war hero. Question is, who is this? Let me see some guesses in chat. Who do you think? And y'all know your history. Who do you think? Who do you think that could be? Decorated war hero. I got no guesses at all. Okay, I got Biden and General MacArthur. Anybody else want to play along and have a little fun here? Michael, you said Hitler. Why did you say Hitler? Anybody else want to jump in? Michael, can you speak to us, or are you Oh, okay, so you know a little bit about Hitler's background that he wanted to be an artist. Okay. Everybody wants to be an artist when they're 5, you know. I did too until my mom told me I was a terrible artist. Okay, so here's the answer. Michael, you're right. That's from Adolf Hitler's autobiography. I'm surprised you got it, but good job. Did anybody else think it was Hitler? Because here's the thing I tried to do was I used visual clues to trick you. And probably what's happening is right now, some of you are just a little bit teed off with that. Because visually, I showed you this picture of a soldier in front of an American flag. And then I had the nerve to read a story about a war hero who was Adolf Hitler. Are you kidding me? He's not a hero. But he is considered a hero in Germany, especially at the time. Then when I show you this, it can really, some people get really upset with this activity because they just think it's just ridiculous that I show an American flag and make it look all patriotic. And the guesses that we got on chat were all American people. What you're seeing is you're seeing a visual that doesn't connect with reality and can take you off track in another direction. You see why information can be misinterpreted. When I do this activity live, I have people that are upset about this for the rest of the workshop. You know, people who have been somehow affected by Hitler in their life. Maybe they have family who was affected by what happened with Germany and the whole thing that went on, that they still hear the stories and they just can't even handle it. So that's how communication can really mess us up. You know, I show you a nice picture of an American soldier with an American flag, tell you a nice story. Your brain goes, this is an American guy. And then I tell you it's Hitler. And now you're turned off and won't even listen to me the rest of the time. It happens. There's just all kinds of ways it can go wrong. Oh, and let's add this, why don't we? Let's put everybody in a mask and let's socially distance them so that we have to stand away from each other and try to hear somebody through a mask, which is not easy, right? I can barely talk through that thing. And let's make everybody afraid that they're going to get too close to us and spray on us if they speak to us. So now we mumble through our mask and try to protect ourselves from the horrible COVID situation. So let's just see what we can do to make it harder, right? Why is communication hard? Oh my gosh. Well, did you know, speaking of communication being hard, did you know that people can talk 3 times, people can listen 3 times more quickly than you can talk? So while you're talking, they're 3 times faster in their head than where you are. And so what happens? They go off and start thinking about other things and then try to tune back into you. And we wonder why they didn't get the message. Sometimes there's visual distractions, like what I did with the slide, you know, where I gave you the wrong picture, or something happens around you. Like right now, my dog is laying over here, the cutest dog you've ever seen, so adorable. What a distraction, you know? So I look over there to see how cute my dog is, and I tune out for a few seconds about what you're saying, right? Sometimes it's a mental block. It's like, I really just don't want to hear what you have to say. Yeah. Like if somebody starts talking to me about something that I really don't want to know about, like I don't really want to talk about how much weight I've gained during COVID. So when I start talking about, you know, that could have happened, I kind of tune out, like, go away, you know, I don't want to hear that. So sometimes we have just this mental block where we make a decision that we don't want to listen, right? Sometimes we just don't understand. I really am having trouble hearing people who are communicating through masks. I don't know about you. Some people are better at it than others, and it depends on the type of mask. I'm even having trouble talking through a mask, especially in a situation where I'm trying to project my voice. I like run out of breath and stuff. Maybe it's just me. But there's just all kinds of ways that it can go wrong. There are just all kinds of ways that communication is difficult. So it's really no wonder why it's so hard. So what I'd like to talk about is what we can do. I mean, what can we do? We know that it's hard. What can we possibly do to help ourselves in this situation? So I'm going to go next to some tips for you to help you to make sure that your communication goes right. The bad news, I got to tell you, is that it's really all up to you, because you're here today and you're going to learn these tips, but the next person you go talk to isn't going to know these things. So you really have to carry a lot of weight. You're responsible for making sure that when you communicate with someone, that you got the right message, that you gave the right message, and that both of you understood the same thing. Then when you walk away, you're both on the same page with what just happened. That makes communication harder, but it solves all kinds of problems down the road. So before I transition to these things that you can do to just change your life, I'm gonna just pause for a minute. Paula, I'm not seeing any questions down there, but have you heard of any questions so far that, or any discussion that anybody'd like to chime in? If you want to do that, you can unmute. Paula, anything on your end?
I don't see any questions, but I have a comment. I know you're surprised about that, but it's like I can hear what I'm saying, what I want to say in my brain, and I say it the way I'm thinking it, and it makes perfect sense to me, and I get a blank stare in response.
Yep.
So, yeah, I have a disconnect, communication disconnect sometimes.
Well, that was like that exercise that we did, where it clearly said to cross out 6 letters, and you don't understand why people don't get that. And they don't. But what I'm going to give you in the next segment here coming up is a technique to use for really helping with that. The reason it's hard, Paula, is because it requires us to stop and think about what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. When we don't take time to structure those messages and we blurt it out, a few things go wrong. We don't say what we think we were saying. And the next time we say it differently, which causes confusion. So I've got a little suggestion for you on that I'm going to talk about in the next section about how to structure your message and do that. The complication is that we are all of the mind that we need to respond right away. That when someone talks to us, we got to have an answer right now. So we start to think of that answer while they're still talking, right? Because we have to have a good response. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we do, If we could slow ourselves down so that we listen completely to what they're saying, and then not be so concerned about this little thing called silence. Because if I could just pause for a moment and think, get my head together about what I need to say and how I need to say it, it can make a big difference. But I feel like I can't have that moment. But if you've ever known anybody like that who uses that moment of silence, super effective. They always come across as being the most wise people. And it's because they have the ability to stop themselves, take a minute to phrase it in their head, to structure it in their head. So when they state it, people understand it a lot better. So I guess my biggest advice is going to be slow yourself down and give yourself that moment of silence that you need. Plus, it's really interesting to see what happens when you go silent for a minute. Sometimes you hear all kinds of things that you didn't expect. Anything else from anyone?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. That's interesting. Okay, so I got 3 powerful action steps, and I've abbreviated it ACT so you can remember ACT. The first thing is to adapt your style. I'm going to talk all about that and explain to you what that means. The second thing is to commit to clarity, and that's really the conversation Paul and I were just kind of having. What she was talking about there was clarity, how to be clear in your message. And finally, take control, because like I said, the bad news in this is that you have to take control of this. You have to take control to make sure that your message is clearly understood and interpreted the way you intended, and that the person who's giving you a message gave you the message that they think they gave you and that you understand it the same way. So is it hard? Yeah, but do you know how much time and energy and emotion and anguish we spend because of communication misfires? So much, right? So much. And most of them we don't even know about because people go silently and worry about them behind your back. Right? All right, so let's see what we can do here. All right, first we're going to talk about adapting your style. Did you know that people have styles? You may have seen this on the wall behind me. I'm a huge fan of DISC. You know, full disclosure, I'm a licensed DISC provider. I love DISC. I think it's really important for people to understand their own personal style and the styles of others. So I work with people on that all the time. The reason I think this is important for us to know is because we just need to understand, being human beings, that all people have a natural style. And that natural style is so real to them that it's their personal style, and it's not about you. You know, I have a personal style. My style is that I'm creative, I have big ideas, and I really love to talk to people. And when I'm planning something or doing something, I think out loud. That's how I communicate. You know, I don't sit back and go, oh, I can't talk to you. I'm like, oh, let's do this. Oh, let's do that. That drives some people absolutely nuts because they want the details, and I'm all big picture and skipping over things and talking about this and talking about that. They can't even keep up with me. It just seems like I talk all the time and they don't even get a word in, right? So I really have to be careful with my style, to slow myself down, to listen to them, to ask questions, to get their input, to make sure I'm not losing them. That's what I mean by knowing your own style. Everybody has a style. Now, some people are very, like this first young lady in the picture, she's very direct. You know, some people like that, they're very direct, almost to the point that sometimes we think they're kind of pushy and maybe a little rude. And it becomes very personal, like, why are they so rude to me? They're not rude to you. This is just their style, because they're very results driven. They're very bottom line. They want to get things done. And this is how they do it. You know, they're focused. Give me the bullet points, give me the highlights, and let's take action and get something done. You have some people that are just pretty creative, like that cute little girl in the green there. She's the creative type. You know, she's kind of like me. She's got all these big ideas and she wants to talk about them. And she's just a very big picture, very creative. The little girl in blue, her style is that she's very, you know, just kind of sweet and loving. She's someone that people like. She cares so much about people. Sometimes people think she's a little wishy-washy, that she can't make decisions, but it's just because she wants everybody to be satisfied. So, you know, she takes her time with things. And then this young man here, kind of nerdy, right? Kind of aloof, but ooh boy, smart. So detail oriented, prefers to work alone, but boy, he can womp these projects out. He knows what he's doing. He's very technical minded, has a lot of questions, very thorough, understands how things connect. This theory of styles was created back in the 1920s by a guy named Dr. Albert Mehrabian. Nope, that was the guy that we just talked about, wasn't it? Let's talk. Mehrabian was the guy with the communication styles. We're talking about the guy here who invented Wonder Woman, and his name is Dr. William Marston. And Wonder Woman is an interesting character because she really is a combination of all these personality styles. But the reason I mentioned Marston to you is because he's the guy who started this whole thing with personality styles and did the research on this. He published a book in 1928 called The Emotions of Normal People. But there are so many models of his theory out there now that it's insane. And I'm sure you've taken some of them, you know, like Myers-Briggs is 4 styles, right? Basically. Colors, if you've ever done colors, 4 styles, right? Strengths finders, there's all kinds of stuff out there, and they're all modeled on his theory. So I always like to give him a little bit of credit. Just to summarize this, I want to show this to you another way. This is a illustration that I took right out of Harvard Business Review. I took it, I'm giving full credit to Harvard Business Review. Don Moyer, as you can see, is the artist, but this was like an editorial cartoon. I don't think they were talking about this necessarily, but they're talking about human personality. And I think this summarizes it so well. And before I go through this picture and explain this to you, I just want to be clear that the reason I'm telling you this is because you're going to find yourself in one of these 4 styles. And you're going to find everybody you know in one of these 4 styles. And if you can figure out what your style is and what their style is, you can change the way you communicate by adapting your style. If you know they're a very detail-oriented person, then you can provide those details even though it's painful for you. Or if you know they're a very pushy person who just wants the bullet points, then you can approach them with bullet points instead of getting your feelings hurt because they're not really paying attention to you. Or if you're the kind of person that likes small talk and needs for people to say, hey, how are you today? And the person that you're going to go talk to isn't, you can adjust your style and not be hurt by the fact that they're not giving you what you need in that small talk. So that's what I'm talking about with adapting, understanding yourself, understanding others, and being able to adapt so that you can still work well together and not be offended, hurt, put off, and unable to do things together because of style. So, but this cartoon, let me show you how this works, because I really think this is it. I mean, this is the secret to life right here. Here you go, all in this cartoon. So what you see here is these 4 people are working on a puzzle, the same puzzle. It is their mission. Their mission is to complete this puzzle. Just like your organizations have a mission, right? You're all working on the same puzzle. You're all working on the same mission. But you can see that the 4 different people have very different thought bubbles in their head about how to do this. The first person, in her head, she sees a trophy, which makes you think, oh, she's probably a little competitive. Look how she's holding her puzzle pieces. She's holding one, but she's got one for you too. She's like, come on, let's all get together. If we all get together and do this, we can do this. Let's go. She's like enthusiastic. Go team, we got this. We're going to do this, right? The second bubble, the second guy, you can see in his mind's eye, he sees a $, which is indicative of bottom line. Like, this is cool, we're going to get this thing done, but it's important that we get it done right. We get it done on time, within budget. We just need to get it done. So let's go. I mean, let's get this thing done. Let's do this. You can see he's holding up one piece of puzzle, just to make it clear. One piece at a time. Let's just get this thing done. The third guy, check out his thought bubble. Here he is standing on this old pedestal and everybody around him has their heart on their sleeve because this guy, he's standing on his puzzle. Look, he's not concerned, he's standing on it. Because yeah, it's important that we get a mission done, but it's not as important as all the people around us. What really matters is the people. Let's take care of the people and we'll get the mission done. People first. Like we got to take care of everybody. So let's just get everybody together and get along. Let's all get along. So that's what I want to focus on. And I know we'll get this done if we just all get along. I call him the love guy, all about the love. Everybody likes that guy too, because they're just really good to work with. And then the fourth person, you see, look at his head. He's got the puzzle finished completely. Probably already put that glue stuff on it to keep it in place. This is our detail person. This is our person who is very good about thinking in terms of systems. He sees the whole thing done in his head, how it should look. He's got this big picture view of it. When we're done, this is exactly how it's going to fit together. So, let's make sure we get this thing done right. That's what he's thinking. I hope you can see yourself in one of those 4. And I hope you can if you start looking at your coworkers, you can see them in these 4 too. Let's get creative and figure out a way to do this together. Let's just get it done. Well, let's get along. That's what's really important. Let's get it right. Can you find yourself in here? Can I see some agreement? Can you see yourself? Yeah? Because we all have a natural style. The thing we have to help people to understand, especially when we're trying to improve our communication, is that there's no good style and no bad style. We just are. It's just awareness of understanding our differences and then working together to make us both more effective. We're all different. That's a good thing. We all have different strengths. It's cool. When it comes to communication, you can use this knowledge of styles. Look at this. If you have that bold, direct person who thinks we just need to get this done, going to be very direct, going to be short, blunt, probably going to skip details. So you know what you need to do is go in, be short, give them bullet points, get to the point, right? Be ready to answer questions, know your stuff. One person that I knew of this style had a sign on his door that he lived by that said, "Be brief, be bright, be gone." He had this very bold communication style. He wanted people to come in. He wanted them to be very brief. He wanted them to be right, know what they were talking about, be bright, and then get the heck out. People that have this stable style, this is the one, the love guy, you know, more quiet. He's gonna be a better listener. Doesn't like a lot of change, and it's gonna be pretty low key. So, you know, if you're gonna talk to that person, they're gonna want you to say, "How are your kids?" They're gonna say, you know, "How's life treating you? And what's new?" You know that they're gonna listen to you very intensely, right? You know that if you're gonna talk to them about a plan that would change something, you're gonna have to be gentle because change is just not a big thing. First, that person needs to take care of people. Then we can talk about change, right? If you're the inspiring type, then you know that these folks like to talk and they need people. They need people. That was the trophy girl, right? Good presenter, very optimistic. But in order to communicate, this person needs to talk to you. So if you're this stable person who's quiet and doesn't really have a lot of tolerance for all this blabble, it's kind of hard to take. If you're this bold person and this person needs to talk and talk and talk, you're like, "Just get out of my office, you know, just get to the point and be gone." And the person that needs to talk is really communicating with you to the best of their ability because they need to talk out loud to think. If you understand that, it's going to make a big difference in the way you can effectively communicate. And that technical person, you know, the one who he just wanted to get it right, think about it. Order, logic, details, wants to take notes. You know that manual you get from IKEA that tells you how to put things together to throw away? This person reads it. They read the instruction manual and they follow it. So this person, if you're going to communicate with them, you know that probably the best thing to do with them is give them something in writing. If there's a procedural manual, they want it. Give it to them. Don't give it to this inspiring person. They're not going to read it. But that technical person, they're going to be all over it. They're going to read it and show you the typos. So this is why it's so important to understand communication styles, because once you do that, then you can learn to adapt your style. And when you can read other people, know your style and how those fit together, it improves the quality of your interactions. Things are just going to be easier. You're going to know how to talk. You're going to be able to get along. You're going to understand each other better. It helps people around you to relax because they're not afraid of what you're doing. You know, those people that are technical, that are really detail oriented, when you're the person that talks out loud, they can't even listen to that. It's so much emotion. It's so overwhelming. They just want to run, you know? So if you're that person that needs to talk out loud and you know you're with that kind of a person, you can learn to tone that down. And that person can learn to ramp it up. And when you meet in the middle, beautiful things happen, right? Eases tension, reduces conflict because we're working together to communicate. And it leads us to really open discussions that were so hard for us before because we understand each other. If you have an opportunity to learn your style for real, and I know some of you have done DISC and similar things, that's the best thing you can do, especially in your workplace, is do something, some kind of an assessment that shows you style so that people understand each other and will be able to communicate better. It works. It's incredible. We're different, so let's work to understand each other. Oh, and then there's another little factor. Men versus women. Okay, I know I have to tread lightly, but I have to tell you the truth. Somebody has to. Men and women are different. And they think differently. I found this perfect cartoon to explain it. Here it is. Men versus women. This is the truth. Tell me it isn't. Two guys meet. Hi. Two women, no. Oh my gosh, a million things are going on, right? Oh, look at your hair. You just get, oh, I like that makeup. That's cute. Oh, that jewelry. Why would you wear silver jewelry and gold jewelry at the same time? That's kind of crazy. I don't know. That top, green, I'm not sure that's the best color. I don't know if I would have used that, you know. Are those jeans new? I don't know. Why does she have cuffs on her pants? That's so 2017. I don't know. Right? On and on and on, right? So women and men, you know, you can tell me if I'm completely wrong, but so far nobody's told me I'm completely wrong about this. Men, we love you. But here's the deal with men. It's like they have a filing cabinet in their brain and they're only able to pull out one drawer at a time. All the others are closed. The old men are coming on now. Here they come to get me. The men can deal with whatever's in that drawer, but nothing else. They have no desire to open any other drawer until that one is closed. Women, they open one drawer, they have to open another one too, because you know there could be something in that other drawer that applies to this drawer. And plus I'm worried about the weight of this drawer, because what if it makes the whole filing cabinet fall over? I wonder if the files are all the same color in this one. Are they color coded as in that one? The paperweight seems different too, you know, when you think about it. Oh my gosh, this has one of the spring things in it. The spring thing, I wonder if the spring thing works in all the other ones. And the men are still in their little file space, just doing their thing. And women are all over the place. So men, now you understand women. We have so many thoughts going on in our head. It's scary and crowded and very complicated. No wonder we're emotional. And here you are, just so calm and cool and just handling the one thing at a time. Anybody want to blast me? Brett?
I just want to commend you for even having the conversation. Congratulations. That's not very, that's not less than bold on your own part, but I think that you nailed it. And I do think there's a lot of things going on in guys' brains too. It's just that I've noticed after my very long and happy marriage, thank you God, that we are sometimes thinking about different things, much like your little slide here. It's one at a time, but whatever we're thinking about, this other stuff that's going on in your, on the right-hand side of your slide, that's just, well, this is where I'll get slammed. It sounds like noise.
It is. It's a hard thing.
So I commend you for being able to even express this, and I've enjoyed this so far. So I'm gonna.
Thank you, Brett. It's just, Brett, I think men can compartmentalize easier than women. You know, they can compartmentalize, they can focus on one thing. You know, it's so funny. It's like my husband and I will be on a road trip and I'll see a sign that says, you know, Starbucks, you know, 3 exits away. And I'll say, oh, Starbucks. And we get close to the exit and he just keeps driving. And I'm like, hello, you know, it would have been nice to stop at Starbucks. He'll be like, you want to stop at Starbucks? I'm like, well, I said, you know, it's hint language. I'm like hinting, oh, there's a Starbucks. You should understand that that means I want to go to Starbucks. He doesn't understand. My hint language is not effective with him because he's compartmentalizing. He's driving, he's looking down the road. That's what he sees. He doesn't hear the Starbucks thing or pick up. He doesn't have time to think through the whole idea that I'm hinting that I want to stop at Starbucks. And now he's just scum because he didn't stop at Starbucks. And he has no clue. And it's sincere. You know, it's not like he's trying to be a bad person. So there are just so many complications. And, you know, I have to tell you, Brett, it is noisy and it's complicated being female. And we do have all of these thoughts. And that's sometimes, I think, why the communication is so hard between men and women. So, any other comments? Okay. So, looking at communication styles, it's kind of easy to understand why your message isn't always clear to others, right?
Hey, Lorna,
Yeah.
we do have one comment that is so funny. Janice says, one thing I've learned is when my husband says he's thinking nothing, it's true.
That is so right.
I can actually identify with that. Yeah, I
This made me
understand.
laugh so hard during the. It's true. It's because they're compartmentalizing. They're not even on the same thing. You know, it's so frustrating because, you know, I'm thinking of so many things and my husband is like a wonderful guy.
And Janice says that they've been married for 37 years.
I just had my 40th wedding anniversary, so
There
I'm
you
with
go.
It's that comic that saved me. It's that understanding of men and women. Okay, so we can understand why our message isn't always clear to others, and that's okay, right? No, That's not okay. That's not okay at all. That's what I'm saying to you is we can understand it, but we got to fix it. It's up to us personally to say, dear, at exit 275, there is a Starbucks. I want to stop at Starbucks in 3 miles. And I will remind you in 2 miles. Instead of letting him drive by and being upset with him because he didn't get my hint language, right? So it's not okay. That's one of the big things we have to do for ourselves to help improve communication is we have to make sure, you know, we're doing our best to adapt to other styles and not taking it personally. You know, not taking it personally, because taking it personally ends in DIVORCE. And not just from your significant other, not just from your spouse, from a lot of relationships, right? It's not easy. One thing to consider in all this is who's your target. And for all of my football fan friends out here who know football or enjoy football, you know, the receiver. In a football game, if you've ever watched a football game, they deliver the ball differently depending on who the receiver is going to be. You know, they deliver it differently. Each receiver is in a different place. There's a different style. There's a different method. So if you can think of it like football, if that helps you, you know, who's your receiver? What's your relationship to them? I'm going to communicate much differently with like my mom than I would with you because I don't know you, but I know my mom. You know, with my family, I can say stuff to them. They'll have to love me anyway, you know, but with you, I need to be a little more careful because I want you to love me. So, you know, who's the receiver of this? Is it a customer? Is it a coworker? Is it your boss? That's a little bit different, right? So you have to think about who you're delivering the message to because it shouldn't be delivered the same way for everybody. It depends on who's the receiver. And how can you flex to their style if you've taken a little time to understand their style? You know, the underlining question in all this too as I go is why does it matter? You know, why does it matter? Because you communicate differently depending on the receiver. Why does it matter? Because styles are different. And if you can be aware of different styles and flex to those, you have a much better chance of success. What do they already know? This is important for you to understand because we spend so much time telling people stuff that they already know. And frankly, it's pretty irritating, right? It's like if we could just take a few minutes to think about what do you already know and leave that out or make it as a question. I think you already know how Project X is progressing, but do we need to discuss that first? Instead of just launching into this 20-minute discussion about it, think about what they already know. What questions are they going to have? Wouldn't it be great if you could figure out the questions before they ask? Then you'll be ready. So that's important. And what's the best outcome? This is a problem in communication. And we don't take time sometimes to think about what we're really going for on this. You know, really, what do we want the outcome to be? So something we need to think about. So if you can adapt your style, I really think you can change the world. I really do. Isn't that a gorgeous picture? That's actually my daughter's dog, and she took that picture, and I love it. But I do think we can change the world if we can work on adapting our style. If you can just try to observe the behavior of those around you, so you can understand what their natural tendencies are, and then flex your style to meet their needs, and take some time just to really make sure you understand the message both ways. Yeah, I really think we could change the world with that. So, all right, number 2, clarity. Clarity. So now we know about adapting our style, but now we really have to talk about how do we get our message through clearly? How do we ensure clarity? Clarity is huge for us. I think the problem with clarity is that it requires that we put a little more time into communication than we are willing to give. It's something, you know, like I said before, it's like we're quick to respond and we don't always really take time to think through it. But if you could think before you speak, or think before you write an email, or think before you deliver a message, you can ask yourself these things, these 3 things. First thing is, how are you going to explain this clearly? How will you clearly explain this? If you can't explain it clearly, you don't have a chance. What's the outcome you want? You know, it's funny because sometimes we just talk without even thinking what's going to be on the other side of what we say. You know, if I want to go to Starbucks, then I need to state specifically that I want to go to Starbucks. If I just say, oh, Starbucks, that doesn't get the outcome that I want. And then I'm blaming somebody else when I didn't clearly state what I wanted. What action will you need? So at exit 275, we'll need to pull off. I need to be specific with my message. This is up to me to do to make sure that my message is delivered clearly. Let me ask you a question. If you had this on a continuum, and for those of you that can't see it, on one side I have the word impromptu, and on the other side is the word structured. So how do you decide what order to put your message in? Do you pretty much just do it off the cuff, impromptu? You know, it's like made without spending a lot of time organizing your message. It's like, you know, it's, you just say what you want to say, kind of go just off the cuff. I think the best way I can explain what I mean is this, because I had this problem as a leader. As a leader and as that kind of personality, I have the ability to just say what I need to say. You know, I'm not shy about it. I can go in and say, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this. And so I never took a lot of time until I understood this to really structure what I was going to say, because I didn't need to. I have the ability to just talk, right? But I didn't think about the fact that my ability to just talk meant that maybe some people weren't getting the message, or maybe that from one room to another, I delivered the message differently because I didn't take the time to really structure the message and what I wanted to say. I didn't take time to think about what questions people would have and how I would answer them. And so I found myself answering very similar questions in different ways because I didn't put the planning into structuring my message. And for you to, looking at this as a continuum, it's like, where do you tend to fall? If you need to communicate something, do you say, I got this, I don't need to prepare for this, I'm just going to go talk to them? Or do you take some time to sit down and think about, who is this? What do I know about their style? How can I best structure this? What's the message going to be? I made this little sheet for you to show you what I've been using. It really helps me out. I just kind of take a message and I jot it down like this, especially if it's an important message that I'm going to have to communicate to a lot of people over time, because I need to make sure that I say the message the same way every time. And I'll tell you what happened to me. This is a true story. I started using this and I said, okay, first of all, my purpose. Why am I even talking to them? I need to be able to tell them, like, in less than 10 words, what's the point of this, right? So I start with that. And then I get my talking points. All right, here's what I need to tell them, A, B, and C. So the purpose is to tell you that there's going to be a change in the way we do this procedure. And because of that, we're changing our priorities. So our priorities, our goals for the next 6 months are going to be A, B, and C. Once we complete those, we'll look at some of the other things we were doing. So cool, I did it. I structured my message. Okay. So I went out and I delivered that message. And I said, exactly what I said. And this is what these are going to be our goals, A, B, and C. What I didn't realize that I did was the next time I delivered it to another group, I said, these are going to be our goals, B, C, and A. I just delivered two different messages. First time I said A, B, and C, and the next time when I said B, C, and A, I delivered them in different order so that the two groups had completely different ideas of what our priorities were. First group thought it should be A is the number one thing we're working on. The second group thought B was the number one thing we're working on. I caused confusion within my own ranks because I structured it, but I didn't deliver it the same way. So for clarity's sake, once you've done this, you need to use this to take this and deliver it face-to-face, to deliver it in email, to deliver it in text, to deliver it on message boards. In whatever way you communicate, deliver the same message the same way every time. So that's what structuring your message is. Here's another one. Which side do you fall on this one? On one side, I have use your intuition or explain your rationale. Do you use your intuition, go with the gut, just say, whatever you think? Or do you try to explain to people why you're doing something? I see some people don't want to spend very much time explaining their thoughts behind what they're talking about or their decisions, because you don't really need to know it. I have the right to make these decisions, and this is a decision I've made. But what we know is that if you go out there and tell somebody a message, what's their first question? It's why? Why do you think that? Why do we have to do that? Why are we going to do it in that order? Why did you come to this? And if we don't satisfy that why, we're not going to have clarity. So we really need to be explaining our rationale, even when we feel like maybe it's not completely comfortable to us. Patrick Lencioni wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And one of the things that he has in there that I love this quote so much, he says, if you want people to buy in, you have to give them an opportunity to weigh in. I really believe in that. If you want your people to buy in, they have to have an opportunity to weigh in. And that's what's going on with explaining your rationale. It's just taking a few minutes to tell people where you're coming from in your thinking and why you made the decision you made. And then on clarity, there's the whole thing of repeating your message through multiple channels. There was a study done by Harvard Business Review, and it's a few years old now, but it was really fascinating because what they were saying was that managers with power just think that their authority is what motivates others. And so they usually start with email and delayed forms of communication and just put their messages out there because they have the power to do it. But they have found that managers that don't have formal power get power by getting buy-in first and putting their messages out in the form of getting buy-in first. And then that they usually start with face-to-face messages, and then they go to the delayed methods. So what they do is they deliver the same message through multiple channels, usually start face-to-face, and then they put out an email that says the same thing, a text if that's what they use, whatever other communication there is. You all know that not everybody reads their email. I told you a story about that earlier. For those people, they need to hear it another way. And if you just send it out through one channel, then everybody's not going to hear the message. So redundant communication, we have to send our messages out through different channels of communication to make sure that everybody has a fair chance of seeing them. And we have to think about the method, the method. Do we text? Do we call them? All of those things. I love this one. This is Dagwood and Blondie. Kids are singing mean songs about my friend Sarah and me, Mr. B. What kind of mean songs? Do you love this? Do you remember this? Sarah and Elmo sitting in a tree. TEXTING. Dagwood says, "You've got to be kidding." And the little guy says, "Oh, it's tough being a kid these days, Mr. B." We used to sing KISSING, and now it's texting. I just think that's funny because it's all about method. Do we call? Do we email? Do we write a message, send a memo or something? Do we text? What method do we use? And we really have to think about who are we writing this to? Who's our target, and what's going to work more effectively for them? And then consider that we should probably do it more than one way, if at all possible. What kind of information do we have to convey? If it's something where they need to see a chart or a graph, a text probably isn't going to work. Is it confidential? Some methods of communication are better for confidential communication than others. How many people are going to see it? If you're sending a text, it's kind of a pain to make a whole list of text things if you're sending it to a lot of people. So there's all these things you have to consider in your method. So take a few minutes to think about that, to make sure that your message goes out with clarity. And another thing on clarity, illustrations. Illustrations help a lot. Remember Moravian's number said 55% visual? So we just need to be conscious that whenever we can find a way to include an illustration or a chart or whatever, it would be a really good idea to use those because it really helps people to interpret our messages more clearly. There are lots of ways to illustrate. You can draw a chart or a graph, or you can draw a picture. You can use a picture. I used the Hitler picture today. Demonstration. I've done a couple of demonstrations with the word thing with the 6 letters. That was a demonstration, to show my point. You can tell a story. Stories work great. And I'll tell you a story about this. I was working with this company who, believe it or not, I don't know how I got this gig because I have no experience in, maintenance of turbine generators, but that's what they did. And the reason that I got hired to do this, to help them, is because they had some really rough policies that they needed to rewrite, some procedures. They had this one, I don't know, a procedure for fixing something in one of these turbine generators in these huge companies. And it was something that breaks frequently. And so they needed all of their mechanics to understand how to use it. So they assembled this group of, brilliant mechanics, like 10 of them, and asked me to facilitate the process of clarifying their process for how to fix this part. They gave me what they had already done. They had an 11-page narrative on how to fix this part, and they said people still don't get it right. And I'm looking at 11 pages of single-space text, thinking these are mechanics, and going, wonder why they don't get it right. Right. Made no sense to me. So, we're sitting here together. I got all these brilliant minds in the room. They're trying to figure out how to shorten it. And I'm an expert writer. I'm working on it. We're trying to figure it out. Finally, this guy in the back, he holds up this piece of scrap paper and he says, "Here, this is it." And we all stop. We like, what? And it was like a half sheet of paper where he had just drawn this diagram. All of a sudden, the guy next to him goes, "That's it." I'm like, what? So everybody gets up and looks at the paper and they go, "That's it. That's it." So we published a half-page hand-drawn diagram of how to fix this part. And the company never had another issue with that again. Instead of the 11-page narrative that we had sent out previously. Can you believe that? And I got hired to come back because I did such a brilliant job. It was this one person who saw this vision to draw a diagram that people could understand. So there are all kinds of ways to illustrate to make things clear. Sometimes we work really hard for it and we make it harder than it has to be. With this manager, thought I'd show you another example of this. With this manager, they had an employee who was missing too much work. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but if you have an employee that's missing too much work and you have that discussion with them, they'll usually deny it. They're not missing too much work. Everything that they missed was legitimate. It's like, this is your problem, not mine. I don't know what you're talking about, right? So the manager, I was trying to help them to communicate this to their employee in such a way that hopefully they would have a successful outcome. So I decided we'd draw a picture of it. And the manager said, "Well, how am I going to draw a picture?" I said, "Let's get a calendar." And this is the picture we drew. As you can see, when you look at this visually, there is a real pattern here. And it wasn't a question of whether the absences were, considered to be legitimate or not. It was just the fact that every Monday and Friday of the month, something happened to this person, strangely enough. And when the employee saw this picture, it was funny because she said, "Okay, you're right." And that was the end of it. And she fixed it. Like, I couldn't believe it. I just figured for sure it was the end of her, but she fixed it. She looked at this picture and said, "Okay, I see." And that was the end of the discussion. So there's all kinds of ways to use visuals to clarify. And in business writing, there's a million great tips, but here's what I'm going to tell you. You can see, if you're looking at the bottom of the screen, you can see this, but just in case you can't, I'll tell you. On June 6th, we're doing a business writing session that's at 2:00 Central, just like the one today. And it's just on how to communicate in business writing. It's like probably the best thing you'll ever attend because there are so many great tips for you for business writing, for making your communication clear and more effective. So I'll just leave it at that. If you can, tune in June 6th at 2:00 and I'll give you some really, really great stuff on business writing. Okay, and finally, we have to take control. Yeah, and this is where it gets hard. I have this picture for you for my football fans. I'm sorry everybody can't see this, but for my football fans, I wonder if you remember this play. This was really cool. This was a Clemson game. And everything was beautiful. I mean, everything went right. They threw the ball to the perfect receiver. He grabbed the ball. I don't know how many yards they threw it, like 70 yards or something. He ran all the way into the end zone, untouched, for a touchdown. But there was just one little problem. As you can see in this picture, He got all excited and he dropped the ball before he crossed the line. No touchdown. You can even see the shadow of the ball there. It's really, really fascinating. So no touchdown. And this is what happens in the communication realm. It's like we've done everything right. You know, we've taken into account their style. We know that they're male or female, and we think about how that helps us. We adapt our style. We think about clarity. We structure our message. We do it all right. And then we get to the very end and they can still drop the ball. It can still all go wrong. So we really have to take control of this. We have to pay attention. So here's some things we can do. And there's just three big things. The first thing is just to ask questions. You know, ask questions to make sure that you're understanding it the way they think they're saying it. You know, like somebody said a while ago, and thanks for confessing that. It seems clear in your own mind, but somebody else didn't hear it that way. So ask questions to make sure that they're hearing it the way you think you're saying it. Analyze the evidence, you know, look at what's going on around you. Remember, you've got not just the words they speak, you've got the nonverbals to look at, their visual, you've got their tone of voice. There's a lot of things to look at in interpreting that message, and be aware of that. And just avoid jumping to those conclusions, because we're all so guilty of that. We're also guilty of just jumping to conclusions. For those of you that are able to see the screen, I want to show you a couple of examples of that. So check out this window. Is it opening in or out? Is this window opening in or out? Some of you see it in, some of you see it out. And really, when you really work for it, you can see it both ways. But you know, if I really wanted to argue with you that I think this window is facing in, I can argue with you all day. And you can argue with me that you see it as looking out. It's perspective. And everybody has one. So you just can't jump to conclusions and just decide that you're right and they're wrong, because if you really look at this, you can see it in different ways. Oh, and I love this one. How about this one? We have one person on the left arguing that there's 4, and the person on the right's arguing that there's 3. There's 3. Oh, my perspective is my truth, for real. So you look at that. So is it 4 or 3? Well, boy, that's really hard to tell. It does depend on which side you're on, how you see it, right? And this is what we mean about perspective. So you can't just assume you're right, because if you really look at this the other way, you can see where they're coming up with 3. And I bet you've seen this one, because this one is old. This was from a cartoon that was drawn in 1915. Can you believe that? By a guy named William Puck. And in the 1930s, it was picked up in the American Journal of Psychology, and it's been used as psychology classes ever since to show differences in perspective. So if you can't see the screen, this is the picture of the old woman, young woman that you can see both of them in. Some of you just see one or the other, right? You see an old woman or a young woman. But just to show you, you know, the young lady, here's her nose and her eyelash. So if you're having trouble seeing it from this perspective, you can see, if you look at this, this is her little button nose, and that's her eyelash. And this is her hair up here, all puffy. She's got her head kind of turned towards her shoulder. So her chin is right there. So you can see the young lady, hopefully. And then the old lady, you see her nose is actually down here. This is her nose, and this is her nostril. All right, so this becomes her eye. So here's her nose, and her chin is down here on her chest, like it's laying on her chest. Like her mouth is partially open. So depending on how you look at it, and when I do this in live situations, I have people that can see one or the other and never can see the other one. Again, it's all a matter of perspective. And they want to argue. You can't, because the key here is it's okay to see things differently than other people, but it's never okay to deny their point of view, because it's just as real as yours. You have to take responsibility for knowing that, and not be the person who's just like, I'm right. Because from their perspective, they're seeing something differently. Being aware of that. That's what it's all about. Do everything you can to make your thoughts visible. That's a tip for you. You know, just be honest with them. You know, here's what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking this way. I've come to believe that there's 4. And I believe that because, right? Can you help me to understand your thinking here? Because there is no way I see a picture of an old lady there. Opinions aside, what facts do we actually have? Let's just take a look at the facts. Have you thought about the possibility that the window could be seen as facing in or out? So just make your thoughts visible. That's a technique that you can use. I heard the funniest story from your Aunt Janet today. She was, now in the meantime here, the teenager's laying on the couch with his phone paying no attention to mom. Jeremy, approximately what percentage of your attention do I have right now? Jeremy says about 20%, 10% if somebody texts me back. And she says, forget it. I'll tell you the story some other time. And he says, what story? This is about listening while you speak and recognizing when the communication's not happening right. Many times, if we just listen to people while we speak, we can see that they're not getting it, but we ignore it. We ignore all the signals. Now, in this cartoon, she picked up on it and walked away. That was the right thing to do because she could keep talking, but he's not going to hear any of it. And then she's going to be like, remember that story I told you? He's like, what story? Right? So a few things here, look for eye contact. Are they maintaining eye contact with you? You can see when they're not paying attention to you. If they're not paying attention, why do you keep talking? If they're looking at something else, stop and say, it looks like you're distracted. Is this a good time? Distractions, watch out for distractions. He's busy on his phone, he's texting with somebody. And she picked it up and said, okay, later. So watch for distractions that might mean they're not paying attention. Get to the point, ask them questions, watch their nonverbals. And one of my favorite techniques, very powerful, is ask them to repeat back. So Paula, when you're finished with that communication where you think that you said everything and still you wonder why they didn't get it, a great technique is just to act confused and say, Jana, we have talked about so much today. I need to make sure I have this straight in my head. So would you just kind of go over with me what we said we're going to do next? And let her tell me her side of it. And usually what you find out is we're not on the same page.
Mhm.
But if I didn't stop and do that, Jana goes off and does exactly what she thinks she was supposed to be doing. Exactly what and then I'm frustrated with her because she didn't get it. But I didn't take time to check to see that she did. So that's so important for us to do. And finally, my advice is this: when the moment comes, be in it. So many times when people are talking to us, we're letting our minds go in other places. We have our own internal distractions, and we're just not paying attention. So when you're in that moment, be in that moment. When you're with your kids, be with your kids. Pay attention. When you go out there to take a walk in the afternoon, just go for the walk and leave all your devices off and just let yourself be in that moment. That's a big stress reducer. Just try to be in the moment that you're in. So your powerful action steps: adapt your style, commit to clarity, and take control. Paula, while I'm taking questions, I have a favor to ask you.
Okay.
Do you see that link up there? Can you type that into chat so that people could grab that link? Because one of the things I promised was a communication checklist. And I want you to be able to go and get that checklist. You can download it and print it for yourself. And if for some reason, if that fails, anyone, just email me at lkibbe@lkibbe.com and I'll send it to you. But you can just click on this link and be able to do it. So what questions do we have? Paula, let me ask you to multitask here. Check on questions and type this link at the same time. I'll try to type it too. Maybe I can paste it in there.
Actually, everybody, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put them into the chat box.
Man, you can't paste into the chat. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, thank you. You got it. Yeah, so you can click on that link and you can get that. So what questions do you have? How can I help? Anything you want to talk about? All right, I'm getting great jobs. Well, I'll just offer this. It's 4:27. We have 2 minutes to spare. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to just get in touch with me. I'll be happy to talk with you and answer any questions you have anytime. And I really appreciate those of you who were able to put in some input for us. Thank you, Brett. And thanks to everybody. Applause to you. So we'll see you next week when we're going to talk about listening. 2:00 Thursday. Be there.
Thank you so much, Lorna. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just want to show you all a list of our upcoming webinars. Next week, we have a social media, one with Marsha Hudson, leveraging LinkedIn for business growth. Then we have our retail expert, Mark Wilson, bringing Fulfillment 2021. Then we have the wonderful Miss Lorna Kibbe back, listening, that thing we don't want to hear about. Then on May 4th, we have Rebecca Schultz for our monthly PPP update. It's the hottest topic on the highway there. And on May 5th, we have Tisha Dodge bringing our legal issues, partnership agreements, avoiding legal troubles. Good information, good information. So I want to make sure that you all enjoyed your time and got something out of it. So we're going to be sending out a survey to everybody. And if you would please return those surveys, it would be great because that helps us to make sure that we are giving you the information that you need and providing the assistance that you want from the SBDC. The SBDC website, sbdc.nctc.edu, is where you can go and find our list of upcoming events. You can register for those webinars there. You can get our contact information and schedule an appointment with an advisor. And we do place other resources for small business owners on that site. And we want to thank our benefactors. We are grant funded and we receive grants from the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office in Dallas, and our host, North Central Texas College. Again, thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time on April 27th at 10 in the morning. Be sure and join us. Thanks so much. And this will end the webinar.